talk about the background, you can see that why this study now. This is a common phenomena of all of us that we can see every one of us is using AI for our writing competence eventually. And I believe strongly that when I'm a private tutor, so when I'm eventually teaching my two students, I can see that they are solely dependent on all of the AI tools that they can find. They are thinking about like, okay, fine, let's check this spelling and then directly write. And they are not even understanding whether it is important for them to understand the internal competence, how we are eventually using our cognitive abilities or like effectiveness for that orthographical competence. So this came in my mind that Zen Alpha is acquiring literacy under constant AI correction. Yes, we do use autocorrection, we do use predictive text and Grammarly and other AIs that we can find. You can see here one picture that I've tried to give you. Over here, spelling is difficult. Like for a pen mistake, right? We can do that. But while we are doing AI checkers, we can see that they are definitely showing us, right? So this eventually came up with all of the other things like why the next generation need a better pedagogy, a balanced pedagogy, and a sustainable one, where we can find that AI integration will eventually make a balanced orthographical competence, in my opinion, and it's based on the ESL learners that we can find. Now, the research questions that you can see over here are very common and very, very intriguing, because when we are talking about how the independent orthographic competence would eventually come up, and then how we are using the handwriting and typing methods both together, and the tasks that you can see, I believe that this is very much important at this today's work. Then we have talked about some others. For the lack of time, I'm gonna cut short. And the theoretical framework, I have tried to understand the multimodal learning theory over here, which is true that whenever a learner is learning, when we have that visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic style in our mind, then we learn better. And then the learner's autonomy framework, where the learner should get mentioned on this part. Okay. Yeah. And then the methodology and the participants, I have tried to cover 6 focus groups. Initially, it's based on daffodils, different departments to undergrad students who are Gen Z. But in further focus, we will be covering Zen Alpha as well. But that's for a future thing. And then I tried to cover up. I didn't finish covering up with all of the interviews, but all the experts, English department teachers. But I have tried to cover some. So therefore, I came up with some of those Brown and Clark's 6-step process of thematic analysis, and I have come up with some ideas that I could show you later. And tests involve typewritten handwriting. This is still on the process. So moving forward with our thematic findings, we can see that students still make frequent mistakes indicating shallow learning despite tool use. We can see that they fail to notice whenever they are making any mistakes. And we can see how long-term this eventually concerns the alpha, Zen alpha spelling competence. And then I have tried to cover one sum up over here that you can see if you, for the lack of time, okay. And then discussion and pedagogical implication, if I talk about, then the findings over here we have seen, but the pedagogical implication I believe is very important. Because foundational spelling, eventually, the integration of foundational spelling courses are very important in undergrad level. And the conclusion would be the study limitation that I have already told you about. The data collection is based on DIU right now at least, and it's a short study duration. It doesn't have the longitude of the follow-up. And the future research would be how the global south of ESL learners or ESL learners can eventually come up with this, and then the handwriting and AI integrated classroom intervention, and eventually how this could, in a long-term, school or university, they come together, the pedagogy would work, and the final conclusion would be the sustainable pedagogy that blends digital tools together and with the learner environment. And finally, one quote: technology can polish the surface, but learning happens beneath it. So, yeah, thank you.